Okay, this is a brief introduction to Access and how to use Access at a very basic level. We're just going to go ahead and jump right in. You can follow along on your computer, hopefully, and so we will get started. First, obviously, you want to go ahead and start Access. And when you start Access, you'll typically see this screen, and it will allow you to choose from some various templates or just to create a basic blank database, which is what we're going to do. So we're going to start and click blank desktop database. Now it's going to ask us for a name. We want to put in something relatively descriptive for this demonstration. I'm just going to put in demo database. And you can choose where you store it. The default is in your documents, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and put it on the desktop, and I'm going to hit create. This is the screen that Access brings up as we enter it. This is where you can begin to manually type information. I'm going to go ahead and manually type in an address. So, right, street. We're going to put in the city and the state and the zip. And that's it. And we can put in another address below it. And so on and so forth. And you'll notice that Access provides a key, an ID field here, and you can add as many fields across as you want up to the limits of Access, and obviously you can add as many rows as you want, again, up to the limits of Access. I'm going to go ahead and save this table. You can do that in various ways. I'm going to hit save up here, and it'll ask you for a table name, and I'm going to put in a table name here called Now, typically when you're creating a table, you want to create a descriptive table name. It's a good practice to not actually include spaces. You can use an underscore character. You can use a variation of what we call camel case, where the first word of each, or the first letter of each word is uppercase. It's sort of up to you to establish a convention. The recommendation is to establish a convention and keep to it for consistency's sake. So I'm going to go ahead and use an underscore here and call it address demo. We'll notice here that the field names are relatively generic, which isn't good. You would like to have descriptive field names, but in order to change those field names, we actually have to go into the design view of the table, and you do that by right-clicking and going to design view, and that brings up a general overview of the table, and here we can begin to edit the fields. Just like assigning the table names, it's generally a good practice to not include spaces in the field names. It's not necessarily a requirement. Access will let you put in spaces, but again, just from a general design convention, it helps to again establish a convention and keep to it. You can just call this, for example, address 1. It's sort of up to you. I'm going to use an underscore character here. City, state, and zip code. Now you'll notice that Access, when you manually enter information, will try to figure out what you're entering and how you're entering it. So for example, the address has a mixture of numbers and characters. So in order to accommodate that, Access assigns short text. Short text is, as you can see here, the field size is limited to 255 characters. If we went to long text, there is no such length limit. The The trade-off with this is obviously memory. It will actually use more memory and more storage space if you use long text versus short text. So if it's something that's only going to be 255 characters, short text is preferable. You can also choose date and time if you're going to be entering a currency. If you're doing what we call a binary field, like if you're doing a survey and your responses are yes or no, you can use this. It basically corresponds to 1 and 0, 1 being yes, 0 being no. If you're going to do like a URL or a web address, you can establish a hyperlink, and so on and so forth. You can actually, in the later versions of Access, I'm using Access 2013, but if you're using Access 2010 and up, you can actually make a field an attachment field, which means that you could upload a document to Access, and Access will actually store that document for you. Again, the trade-off with this is size. So if you attach or store an attachment, like a picture file or a text document, that sort of thing, the size of your database will increase according to the number of things that you are storing there. Zip code. So zip code is currently assigned a number because that's what I put in, right? 76542. It's number. The problem, of course, with zip codes is there are some zip codes in the United States that begin with a 0. And if you choose number, the leading 0 will not be preserved. So Access will actually drop the 0. So if you enter like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, it will only store 1, 2, 3, 4. Obviously, 4 digits is not a valid US zip. So we want to change this to short text so that that leading 0 is preserved. Things to be aware of. I went ahead and saved the table. I'm going to go ahead and get out. I'm going to go back into the table, and now you can see that this is the field names correspond to what we have entered in. We still have what Access is doing is basically providing us with a primary key. A primary key is a unique identifier for each row, which means that it has to be unique per row and can't be duplicated. So if I have, 100,000 rows, each of the keys in those 100,000 rows need to be unique. Obviously, they can be numbered 1 to 100,000, and that would be unique. But you can also do, a combination of numbers and characters, provide a code of sorts. As long as the code is unique, it can be a primary key. And the way we designate that in Access is I went back to the design view here, and there's a little key right over here that says, okay, this is a primary key. And you can do that to any one of the fields here just by right-clicking on that little gray square, and you can say, oh, I want this to be my primary key, or I want this to be my primary key. Again, the caveat there is that it must be unique for every row. All right. Manually entering data is, easy. It's not terribly difficult, but it's not necessarily the best way to get data into Access, especially if you're trying to get a large amount of data into Access all at once. So the way we do that is by going to external data and importing the data. And you can import it as an Excel file. You can actually import it from a text file. So if you have a CSV, a comma delimited file, or just a file of text that has like tabs between each of the fields, you can import it from a text file. You can import a table from another Access database. And there are a lot of other ways that you can get data into Access from an external source. What we're going to do is we're actually going to import an Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to show you how to do that. This is a fairly typical operation. You can receive a table or a table of information from a client or a customer or whatever that is not necessarily in Access format. It could be off of the web. So for example, I'm actually going to copy this table just like this. I've already launched Excel, so I'm going to paste the table into Excel. I have a blank space up here. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. But now I have, column names, and I've got the data here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to save this to the desktop, and I'm just going to save it as orders. Okay. So now I have orders with the data on it. I just copied and pasted it right from an HTML table from the web. And now I'm going to go ahead and import that. So I'm going to go to Excel. You can import data in a number of ways, especially if you're doing it from Excel. You can import the source data into a new table, which is typically the way you will always want to import data. You can, if you have an existing table, append the data to that table. So what will happen is if you have a table full of data already in Access and you want to add data to it, then that's what you'll do. You will append the records to that table, and then at the bottom of the table, your records will appear once you've done importing the data. Or you can create a link to that data. This is handy if somebody is actually editing the Excel file and you want the Excel file and Access to sort of mirror each other. The problem is that it makes the Access database non-portable, meaning that you can't take the Access database from your computer and put it on somebody else's computer and have it work, because that Access database will actually be looking for the links to the file, so you'd actually have to move everything, and you have to keep it in the same folder on the different computers. So if your My Documents, for example, for me, has my name in it, and if you move it to Joe's computer, it'll have his name in it, and the links won't actually transfer over. So you want to be careful with that. So what we want to do is we want to import the source data into a new table, right? This is going to ask for the file name. We put it on the desktop, orders, and I'm going to say OK. And this is going to say the first row contains some data that can't be used for valid access names. And that is these little pound signs here are things that Access doesn't really understand. So we're going to actually have to rename the tables according to how Access understands them, right? So here we go. We're going to say the first row contains the column headings. Yes. We're going to change this to order number. Again, Access is interpreting the data, so it's interpreting this data as a double, and it's saying that we are not indexing this field. However, for the purposes of this table, the order number is the primary key. So we can actually say, yes, we want to index this data, and there will be no duplicates. So these numbers will not repeat. So I'll never have another 1010 in this table as rows get added. Over here, I'm going to do the same thing. Here, I'm going to do the same thing. Date is fine. You will notice that it's saying date with time, which is fine. We're going to leave that. It's trying to import this field, which is a blank field. So I'm going to say, no, I don't want to import that. I don't want to import that. And I don't want to import that. I only want to import these 4 fields. All right. Now it's going to say, let Access add a primary key. No, I want my own primary key, and that primary key is going to be order number. And now I'm going to import this table, and I'm going to call it orders. Finish. You can save these import steps. So for example, if you're going to go through this whole thing again with the same file and everything, you can save the import steps. I'm not going to do that. So now you'll notice here it is. all of my data. The dates are all there. And if I actually go to the design view, I will see that this is a primary key and all of my data types are correct. And that's a good way, a quick way to import a large amount of data. Again, you can also do that with text files. So if you have a comma delimited file or a tab delimited file, semicolon delimited, whatever, you can actually import all of that data into Access in one go, and it makes things very nice. All right, I'm actually going to do that again. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take the customer table here and put it here. Oh, I left out a 0. Let me put that back in. Okay. I'm going to rename this sheet here. I'll show you why in a moment. I'm going to go ahead and save this. This is still underneath the orders Excel. It's just in a different sheet. So what we're going to do is underneath external data, I'm going to go through the same steps. Import. I want orders. Hit OK. OK. Now it says our spreadsheet file contains more than one worksheet or range. I want to actually import the customer. Now you can only import one sheet at a time. Access won't let you import multiple sheets off of Excel at the same time, which is, kind of a pain sometimes. But that's just the way Access works. We're going to say that the first row contains column headings. There we go. Everything looks good there. I'm going to go ahead and rename this. This is going to be my indexed field. This is short text, short text, short text, short text. Again, the zip code, one of those things that you got to watch out for. It will sort of creep up on you if you're doing stuff for New England zip codes or just for the United States. You want to change that back to short text so that it preserves the leading zeros should somebody have a zip code that begins with 0. Credit line. Credit line is actually a currency, so we're going to go ahead and put that in as currency. Again, if I let Access add a primary key, it'll just be ID. But again, I have my own primary key. It's going to be customer number. And if you do import a worksheet and that worksheet has a name, then the name will appear here. So I don't have to write it, which is nice. And there it is. And you'll notice since I imported the credit line as currency, everything has a $ in front of it and the comma to denote the thousands and decimal point for the cents. And there it is. All right. The next thing we're going to talk about is relations. So primary keys help any kind of database create an index for the table, which means that searching and linking things will go faster, which is what we want. We want the database to be performant. The other way to do that is to tell the database that you have fields within each table that relate to each other, and those are going to be foreign keys, which means that we have a key from one table in another table. And the way to do that in Access is to go to Database Tools and click Relationships. And this is where we actually tell Access how the tables are related. So I'm going to pull up Customer and Orders, and I'm going to tell Access that the customer number here, is the same as the customer number there. Now it's going to tell me, okay, your customer number from customer is here in the orders table. And it's going to ask for the relationship type, and that's currently a one-to-many. So what this means is that for one customer can have many orders, which is true. An order, for the purposes of this demonstration, can only have one customer on it, but one customer may have many orders, therefore it is one-to-many. This enforced referential integrity means that if I update the customer table or the orders table, I want to cascade that update across both of the tables. So if they're related, I want to cascade that. And to cascade deleted records means that if I delete the customer number from the customer number record from the customer table, all of the orders that correspond to that customer number are deleted. And if I don't delete those, then it actually won't let me delete the customer number. So we're going to go ahead and create. And oops, I have that table open. So let me close that table. There we go. Let's try that again. One to many, yeah. Create, boom. One to many, that's the infinity sign. And there you have it. That's how you create foreign keys within Access. You can't actually go to the design view and create a foreign key because that doesn't exist in Access. You have to go to Database Tools and Relationships and tell it, hey, this is the foreign key. Okay. Queries. So if you want to create a new query, there are a couple of ways to do it. You can go to the Query Wizard or the Query Design. If you go to the Query Wizard, it'll ask you what kind of query you want to create. If you want to create a simple query, which is basically, you can think of it like filtering out data from within a singular table or between a couple of different tables. If you want matching records, say I want all of the orders for customer A, or I need to know how much does customer A owe me, then a simple query wizard is what you want. A crosstab query wizard sort of corresponds to pivot tables in Excel. So it has fields across the left-hand side of the query and fields across the top, and it has summary data in the middle. You also have a find duplicates query wizard and a find unmatched query wizard, which sort of help find duplicates across tables or within a table. And the same thing with the unmatched, finds unmatched things across a table, across several tables. For our purposes, we would just do a simple query, and it'll ask you, what table do you want? You can pick the table, pick the fields, and say, I want these fields, I want all of the fields. Oh, I didn't mean to select that field. Put it back, whatever you'd like. So that's the query wizard. We're actually going to go into query design, and I want to pull in both of my tables. And since I've already established the relationship for these tables, that relationship shows up when I add both of those tables. If I were to take one of these tables away, that relationship would not apply. So I'm going to actually say, look, I want my customer name, I want my customer address. You can also do it from here. I want my customer city, I want my customer state, I want the order number and the date of the order, for example. And that's really, when you do a query like that, that's all that's the only necessary pieces of information, is just what fields do you want to appear on that query. If I were to run this, you can see that I can say, oh, hey, look, there are all of my queries. If I go back into the design view, I can apply some criteria. So for example, I want all states that are equal to Ohio. And if I run that query, only the Ohio states show up. I can also sort. So for example, I want all orders in Ohio, and I want to sort those by customer name, ascending. So now everything is, in alphabetical order. You can also do descending, right? Easy enough. You can also create calculated fields. So for example, if I wanted to, for some reason, do like a credit line here, I can actually say, oh, give me, a calculated field. I want to do a total on credit line and group by customer. I'm actually going to take order number out of here and say, never mind with this. We can cut that. And now if I have more than one credit line, it will sum that information. I can group it by orders, by customer, group by, I can do sum, I can do average, min, max, so on and so forth. Okay. Okay. Calculated fields. If I want to do a calculated field, I can come in here and I can say build, and it will bring up this expression builder. And it says enter an expression to define a calculated query field. And there are a variety of things that you can do. You can add two fields together. You can concatenate a field. So, for example, if I wanted city and state together, a bunch of different things. There are constants, there are operators. So if I want to add, multiply, divide, if I want to create an if then expression to say if something is greater than something else, then display X, and if it's not, then display Y. So there are a variety of things that you can do within a calculated field. I'm just going to do a quick concatenate. I'm going to do city. The and is the join between two fields. So if you want to join two fields together, or concatenate two fields is the technical name for that. Use the and sign. And state. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to hit run. And you can see here now the city and state are concatenated together. The column name is still called expression1 or expr1, and I don't really want that. I'd like to have that be a little more of a descriptive name. So I'm actually going to come in here and edit that, and I'm going to say city state. And there it is. So that's how you do a calculated field. And again, the calculated fields, I mean, the sky is sort of the limit on that. Again, just sort of depending on what you want to do. You can check out the built-in functions. You can do arrays, conversions, database functions, date and time functions. Again, there are a whole host of things that you can do with a calculated field. So there are some videos that have been posted about that in eCollege. So I encourage you to check them out. We will actually be using calculated fields in the project. So that's something that you want to be familiar with. All right. Forms. Forms. Yay, forms. Again, there are form wizards, so you can say these are the things that I want to appear on a form. I want the customer name, city, state, address, so on and so forth. You want that, and you can say I want it in a columnar, I want it tabular. You can kind of see how these things are laid out if you want it just as a data sheet. So if I do tabs, I'm going to put this customer form, finish, and there's the form. You can obviously modify this if you go to design view. You can change how things appear here. Again, for the purposes of this demonstration, that's sort of beyond the basic. But again, you can change the layout view. You can change the design view. This sort of comes from a specific query. So the control source is from name. That's what we picked, right? City, so on and so forth. And you can actually make a calculated field here. So if you hit that triple dot here, it'll let you build a calculated field if you want to. Again, for example, concatenate two fields together. If you want to add two fields, get a sum or an average, so on and so forth. That is how you would do that. You can design forms from scratch. So, for example, if you want to create a blank form, you can just start from here. Right, and you can, again, go into design view and say, hey, this is how I want things to appear. I want it to pull from these tables here. These are the, pieces of information that I want. I want that, 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 that. Let's see here. View, right? And that's how that looks. And you can, go through the various records and so on and so forth. And that is how you do forms. I'm going to go ahead and close all. I don't really want to save that, so I'm not going to. I don't care about this either, so I'm going to delete it. And finally, reports. Reports are basically forms, just slightly different. Reports typically will display a bunch of information at once. Again, depending on the query that you assign to the report will dictate the information that appears on the report. So if you create a query that has a filter of, for example, the state of Ohio, and you want to report of all things by state, then you would say, I want my reports to be built with that in mind, to say, I want each page to display a different state, or I want the report to only display information about customers and orders for the state of Ohio. And again, sky is sort of the limit on that. Very much like forms, you can change the format, background image. You can get kind of fancy with it, sort of beyond the scope. But there are videos that are posted in eCollege that go into slightly more detail about forms. And again, I encourage you to check that out. There again are report wizards. So for example, if you want to, this is how the report will appear, and you can say you can sort the records, you can sort it by state, for example, and you want it in columnar, tab, so on and so forth. And there it is. So that's how the report appears. And that's it. All right, so that's it. That is the basic overview of Access, how to use it. Again, the meat of it is going to be in creating the tables, getting the data into the tables, and then creating queries for those tables to get the information out that you want. And getting the information out can happen in several different ways, through reports. You can put information into Access through forms, and you can obviously export the data directly from the table, or by creating a report and printing that report. So that's it.